Welcome to the Business Grind, where we give you an inside perspective on what it takes to start, build, and run a successful business. Here are your hosts, Danny Shaw and Sean Michael Wellington.
All right. Hello to everyone in podcast land. Thanks for joining us. Sean, how you feeling today?
Feeling good and feeling essentially good today.
All right. So today's episode, we're going to discuss the book Essentialism, The Disciplined Pursuit of Less. It's been a while since we did a book review, so I'm definitely excited to discuss and get into this one.
Yeah, it does feel like it's been a while since the last book, but I found that this book was very similar to the last one in a good way. Okay. Very complimentary, maybe is a better word, to the last one we read. So,
which was the 4-Hour Work Week. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. I don't want to say clickbait, but not as a sensationalized title as the 4-Hour Work Week, but definitely
right.
Very insightful as well. So the book is by Greg McKeown. So just a little background. He's British, right? If I'm not mistaken. And he initially was going to school to be a lawyer. Then kind of changed paths and, started finding his purpose and focus on what is essential and trying to do things. And now this is like his thing, or how to focus and really be mindful of not spreading yourself thin, I guess.
Yeah, he basically tries to, and that's why I said it was similar to the 4-Hour Work Week, because he tries to break your mentality that we've been conditioned for in the modern, rat race today, is just in terms of saying yes to everything.
Right.
And I don't want to jump right into it, but one of the things that stood out to me about this book is how he defined the word priority and how we've co-opted that word and totally distorted the definition of it in our daily dealings. So.
Right. All right, so let's start then. Let's start. Since you said you didn't want to,
all right,
let's jump into it. All right, so first and foremost, I guess it sounds like you like the book.
Yeah, definitely. This is I really liked it a lot. I read it and did the audiobook like a couple different times just because there were things that I thought were like just perfect. There's no other way to say it. Just perfect.
Right.
And then, he kind of starts off the whole book. The first couple chapters are about breaking the mindset. And he, like I alluded to earlier, he kind of discusses how the word priority means the most important thing. Mm-hmm. And in the modern day, we've taken it to make it multiple important things. Like, these are the priorities, but that's an oxymoron, because the priority means the one important thing that you should focus on. So it was just starting the book off kind of with that early and really just set me up for what the rest of the lessons were. Because it was like, you know what, that makes a lot of sense. So.
Right. I agree with you. I think what kind of drew me in first and foremost was the anecdotal story that he gave about his own situation, life circumstances where he wasn't being essential with the choices he was making. Essentially, that's probably going to subconsciously say essentially a lot in this episode,
right.
But essentially he missed the pregnancy of his child for a business meeting, right? Because he felt it was important, and I think his boss or partner made him also feel like, this is more important than the birth of your child, and the client will respect you. And the shame and embarrassment he felt when he did do it, and also with the client looking at him like he was crazy, like, what are you doing here instead of being there for the birth of your child, right? So that story just pulled me in, like, okay, this is not someone who's just speaking about it. Like, he's lived it, where he wasn't being essential in how he was prioritizing his life and what was important to him,
Yeah, he wasn't prioritizing the correct things.
Right, exactly.
So, just continuing along with his story, he reached out to his homie, his mentor, I believe it was, and he said, hey, I want to quit. What do I do? And his advice was perfect. It was, Don't quit, stay, but do. His plan was to quit and be a consultant so that, obviously he still makes income and still does just the things that he enjoys about his job.
Right.
So quitting and then coming back offering his services as a consultant. Mm-hmm. The mentor said, do that, but don't quit. Right. Only do the stuff you would do as a consultant, and decline everything else. And that was mind-blowing to me. So,
listen, I thought, I agree with you. One, I thought that was mind-blowing, but also I thought it was mind-blowing because I've done the same thing.
It sounded like you. I'm not gonna lie. When I heard the advice, I'm like, yo, that's some Danny advice right there. So
yes, that is some Danny advice, because that's exactly what I've done. Listen, it's not like I've always done that. I've been in scenarios where I've definitely overexerted myself, and I've lost focus on certain priorities as well. But I will say more in recent times, more often than not, that is kind of the approach I take, where it's like, there's nothing, there's no shame in being a consultant. There's no shame. I think what I took away from that, from the advice on being a consultant, what I took away from it wasn't that you're necessarily doing less work or slacking. It's really more so that you are setting boundaries on what is essential and what isn't, more so than anything else. It's not, I didn't get anything from the story like he was taking shortcuts. I didn't get anything like he was cheating, quote unquote, the system, right? I just got it. Acting more like a consultant allows you to be in a space where you're able to set more boundaries for yourself and your colleagues, which in turn allows more respect.
Yeah, that was one of the things he highlighted a couple times, is that the more he said no, the more his coworkers, though they were disappointed he couldn't work on what they wanted to, they respected him more, and that's kind of the goal. And like on top of that, I think it's also setting your own boundaries, but also focusing on the things that you're good at and that are going to make you shine, right? So if you're doing all this administrative work or whatever it is, whatever things are distracting you from what you're best at, it's not going to put you in the best light. If you're only doing the things you're great at, you're going to look good all the time. So what did you think about, so after he explained and set us up, he kind of moved on to, it was another like nugget. There's so many nuggets in this book. Yeah, I agree. But this one I loved. It was, you can't control your options, but you can control your choices. And I thought that was brilliant. So I'm curious what you thought about that chapter.
So listen, first of all right. Yes, that was also brilliant as well. So there was a lot in this book that I picked up on from other things that I've studied and engaged with, right? So one is, product and project management. Like there's a lot of principles in this book from product management and project management that is in here, and I'm like, oh, this is what we do in this area already. It's just kind of more put towards you're applying it to your life now instead of just work and projects, right? In project management and software development and tech and stuff like that, it's like, well, what is the priority? Because you want everything. You want a website or app that can do 20 million things, but we can't do it all at once, right? And I saw him kind of invoking that and sprinkling it throughout the book. So it kind of makes sense that he's like consulting and work with these tech companies. But then also to the statement that you just said about you can control the options, that touches on like stoicisms, right? Like the philosophy of stoicism, where it's like, you can only control yourself, not really everything else around you, right? Like, right. Or give your energy to things that are within your control. If it's not within your control, why are we allowing ourselves to be overwhelmed and exerted by these things, right? Like there's a lot of things, and we see it all the time in like the work, especially in the work environment, like, things that are out of our control, but we will stress and fret over. So I felt like that statement was very much in line with that similar philosophy. So he's mixing it up in here, but he's putting together a nice little meal with the different
right, yeah, you got a nice little buffet of gems.
Yeah. So definitely agree with that. Like, can you repeat that statement again? What was the quote again?
The quote was, you can't control your options, but you can control your choices.
Right. So I totally agree. Now I'm not gonna sit here and act like I adhere to it for every situation, of course, right? We're human, but it's definitely a good, little reminder or something that I try to align myself with. Yeah. But it was good. It was definitely, I was like, okay, I'm picking up what you're putting down. Okay. It was a few, honestly, we could probably be talking about this book for a few hours. But what is it to mean to be essential, right? And like, what is it really and means, especially in today's world where even before COVID, we talk about this a lot. It's like the notion of you got to be productive 24/7. You got to keep moving. You got to do something, right? Like you're not building a business or whatever. And even during the pandemic, early on, it was a great, a lot of things was shifting, and it still is. Right. But then you saw people saying, well, if you're not productive during a pandemic, then I don't, like really that productivity shaming, like, well, people literally dying around us. But, you still have people that was still like business and productivity at all costs. Right. And it's like,
the Instagram entrepreneurs. Yeah.
And which is probably, I think it speaks to what this book is about. It's like, was that essential? What's essential during these times? Your health, right? Surviving, right? Like, oh, you didn't create your multi-million-dollar company during the pandemic. Shame on you, right? But like, is that really essential when we see what's going on in the world around us right now? And right. And what about your mental health? And what about your family and the well-being? Like, there was so much going on. There still is. What is really essential to you and your well-being right now?
Right. And I loved in the book where it was almost bars. He started coming at essentialists do this,
right?
Non-essentialists do this, and then he had a couple of examples throughout.
Yeah,
and they were all great. They were all perfect examples because it really put them in practical terms.
Right. And what was the quote? If you don't prioritize your life, someone else will. Right. And
someone else will prioritize for you.
If you don't prioritize your own life, somebody will definitely come in and say, hey, and that, I'm a little conflicted about that statement because, I mean, it's definitely true, right? It's definitely true. But I think also with what I see, a lot of people want someone else to prioritize their life, right? Like,
do they?
No,
really?
I know that's a spicy comment, but
I mean, you might be right. I just don't know if they do it. Are they conscious about it? Maybe that's what it is.
Okay, so that's a fair point. They might not be conscious of it. And I might just be speaking from my own. I'm speaking from my own perspective, which might be a little limited, but I do feel like in certain situations, we'll say one thing, but then our behavior betrays what we say in regards to how we're prioritizing our lives. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because when you kind of give them, it's a weird dynamic. When you give them the free range to make certain choices and say, hey, here's your flexibility and freedom to start doing making these choices on your own. A lot of times they get frozen in the headlights, right? Or not sure how to make that shift because they've probably been in a place where they're so used to having someone else prioritize their life, right?
Yeah, decisions have been made for them,
Mm-hmm. So it's kind of it's an interesting statement, but I totally agree with it. If you don't prioritize your life, someone else will. And I think for me, I lean more on the side where I want my life. I want to prioritize I want to do it on my terms and figure it out, and I don't want it to be dictated to me.
He kind of jumped from that to talk about the trade-offs. I think there was like a big section about trade-offs, and essentially that's it's part of prioritizing because you know that you get 2 assignments, you can't do them both to the best. So and I love how he had I don't remember if it was a true story or if it was an example, but it was basically how to speak to your supervisor or your whoever you're subordinate to when they hand you a new assignment that you don't have the bandwidth for. It's like, okay, I'd love to tackle this. What can I deprioritize or whatever the language is? It's like you're putting in their head that now that you've given me this new assignment, I can no longer focus on what I've been doing. So just so you know, something's got to give. So and then in that example, they were like, never mind, don't do this. We'll give it to this less organized person. So I mean, that was such a good story, and it was a practical application of what he was talking about. So.
Oh yeah. See, and it's interesting you brought that up because that's definitely one of those project management, product management principles that topics that gets discussed a lot. It's like, oh well, you want this bells and whistles, but you also want this other bell and whistles as well. All right, which one are we gonna do? Because we can't do them both at once, right? You gotta figure out what that trade-off is gonna be. And a lot of times, I will say some of my most uncomfortable conversations have been around trade-offs in the work environment because I don't. It's similar to what he was saying earlier about priorities, right? It's priority, not priorities, and we've kind of pluralized it and just think if you have 17 priorities, then nothing is a priority, right? All 17 of these things cannot be a priority. So what are we trading off? What is the focus? There's been those type of conversations that I've had with clients. Even clients that come to the table and they want to do everything and they want it in this amount of time. But you really have to be mindful of that. What's the trade-off and what are you willing to trade off? And also applying that to your personal life as well. Because it's not just about work. Our personal life, sometimes we try to knock out everything at once. And it's like you're moving at a snail's pace. You're making incremental gains here in this category, that category, but not really doing much of anything at all, right?
Yeah, the whole ship hasn't moved. You just moved a couple inches on each side. Yep.
Exactly, exactly.
And I don't, it's a small rant, but you know what reminds the priority and the I'm gonna call it the perversion of the word.
Okay.
It reminds me of how people use the word GOAT now.
Oh.
Which was an acronym for greatest of all time. And
Right.
now you can have 5 or 6, 7, 8 GOATs now. They be like, yeah, these 10, who the top 10 GOATs? It's like, you totally missed.
Exactly. GOAT definitely was the greatest of all time. Now everything is a GOAT.
Right.
And then he also, he talked about the perks of being unavailable, right? And management of time and needing to escape in order to focus. And oh man, I mean, for me, that hit, right? Like that really hit. Like I think there is a lot of, well, one, I'm very big on time and how you manage time and value time, right? So so I do think there's a lot to be said where it's not just about how much time you spend on something. It's also about how much time you don't spend on something that's not going to be of value, right? And the escape and the perks of being unavailable, sometimes you have to limit your availability, whether it's to clients, whether it's to certain aspects of the job, whether it's to in your personal life to certain friends and families who are pulling at you and taking away from you and your own well-being, right? Like does making yourself available in all these aspects, is it essential? And I do think, especially now in the days of technology, right? We have access to everybody, right? Or let me say, we think we have access, right? Just everyone's connected. So I think for a lot of us, we just assume, well, you're online, so I have access to you. You're available at any given time, right? Mm-hmm. And I just think, the point of there are perks to just escaping and escape to focus, because there's a lot of distractions out here. We talk about this. I think we've touched upon this on a few episodes. The whole, I don't know when it was, the exact time frame, but there was a trend at one point, I'm not sleeping, I'm working, I'm grinding, I'm building. I sleep when I'm dead energy, right? But lack of sleep will make you dead sooner than later, right? Like, you have to rest. There is a lot to be said to that rest, making sure you're properly recharging your battery in your body, because the real asset is you, yourself, your person, your body, not all these businesses that you're trying to start, or all these endeavors and meetings and just trying to be productive, right? And, the best asset, the quote from the book is, the best asset we have for making a contribution to the world is ourselves, right? And I totally agree. It kind of goes in line with that statement of, invest in yourself. Every weekend I have like a little reminder, and I shoot out to some of my friends, like, don't forget to invest in yourself, right? And we are our most important asset, whether we realize it or not, right? And as that lack of sleep and that lack of rest really is not it doesn't make us as productive and as valuable as we think we are,
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think he had a story in there where, or maybe it was just an example again, but it's like, yeah, somebody was like, I could survive on 4 or 5 hours of sleep. And it's like, you're just so used to not being fully rested that you think you're surviving on 4 hours of sleep. So it's like, we get so stuck in this rat race and waking up at 8 to get to work by on time or whatever it is. And it's like, you're not getting full night's sleep, and you've just adjusted to that. So now you're always working at half capacity. So.
Right. Yeah, it was, he told the story of, the gentleman's name is escaping me, but the gist of the story is essentially, here we go again. He was a high prolific producer, right? And I mean producer in the sense of he just produced a lot. Companies, funding, trailblazer, high achiever in his 30s, and family. Like, he was hitting all the check marks, just knocking it out the park in all these areas of life, professionally, personally, and all these things, and just a super high achiever. But at what cost? And the cost was his health. his health was his cause. He was going at such a high rate that his body couldn't keep up and sustain what was going on with his life. And he wasn't sleeping and he wasn't resting. He wasn't allowing his body that proper time he needed to recoup and recharge. And the doctors basically told him, listen, you got to stop everything. Like literally just stop. I think they told him like 6 months, something. I think they told him
it was a sabbatical.
Yeah,
or
like he
something,
had to
right?
take a sabbatical. They told him you cannot keep at this pace. You have to stop. Like literally just stop everything for like a good 6 months. And he was like, nah, I'll be back up to speed. I think he gave himself a 2-week period, a 3-week period, that he would be back up to speed. And he didn't. He couldn't. His whole body crashed. He crashed. His body crashed on him. And it again, just another example of how important our body is and to our. I mean, it feels like it's self-evident that we should realize how important protecting our body is and listening to our body, but we don't, and that's why we have these. I'm grinding all the time. I don't sleep. I'm this. I'm that.
The societal pressures
Right.
override our common sense.
Right, exactly. While y'all sleeping, I'm grinding and that type of stuff. Which it's cute. It's cool. It's motivational, but like that's not the norm. Like it's a balance, right? It's definitely a balance there. What do you think about the power of no?
I was okay. So that was the last thing I had written down here.
Okay.
I thought, I thought it was perfect. It was having a graceful no, and you can say no without ever using the word no, which he teaches.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I loved it. It showed, especially for something, because I've been in that position before. It's something you actually do want to do and wish you could do,
Right.
but you know that you're not going to be able to do it as good as you want to with the amount of time you have, or you just don't have time. Period. Even if you would like to do it, and it sucks sometimes, but there's ways to say no without ever actually using the word no, so neither of you feel bad about it.
Right. Yeah. I listen. The power of no is it's just very impactful, and it's something that should be utilized a bit more. I think. I was in a situation recently like that where I said no, but I didn't feel bad for saying no because I knew like this wasn't essential right now, right? Like. It was a project that was supposed to start last year, right? Like last year. And every quarter we're supposed to schedule a meeting and the meeting doesn't happen. And right now definitely have the plate is a bit full and here they come again, right? Like, hey, we're ready. I'm like, I'm not, right? Like, no, we can't. I can't do it right now, right? Like, I can't even do it. It's probably best for you to move forward. And I didn't feel bad. I don't think anybody felt bad, especially the way the conversation went. But it was definitely very refreshing instead of feeling like, oh my God, I gotta take on this project. It's like it's not essential right now. It's just not. So it can't be done, and let's move on from there, right? As opposed to saying yes and then you can't deliver anyway.
Right. And then also, I think he had a quote where like, if it's not a firm yes, it's a no. So
right.
when you give those vague answers, you're basically saying no, but you're scared to say no.
Exactly. So you gotta be, say with your chest. Be like, no, or like I said, if it's not a firm yes, you can say no. And I think depending on, obviously, there's a little bit more nuances depending on the circumstances, right? Because usually, I'll say no. If it's a project that I just know I have no interest in, I'll just be like, no, it's no. If it's a project that I am interested in, but I can't do it right now, it's a no, but let's check in next quarter.
A graceful no.
And if the circumstances have changed and we're both able to make this an essential part of both of our agendas, then it can turn into a yes. But yeah, if it's not a hard yes, then it's definitely not.
I will say, just human nature, the one part that maybe is a little hard for people to put into practice is the no's, right? People just don't like saying no. People are scared of confrontation. So but you just gotta rip the Band-Aid off. The first time you do it, like they said in the story, after you get to the habit of it, your peers are gonna respect you more, and you're gonna feel better about the work you're doing because you have a clear focus on it. So
right. What did you think? And I'm only speaking on this because we just did an episode in a similar theme, but what do you think about win big by cutting your losses on commit?
Okay, so I thought it was great advice. I wish there was a better example in that he gave though.
Okay.
What do you think about it though?
Well, all right. Now, yes, the concept I agree with. You win big by cutting your losses, and also consider the episode we just did about the losses and learned lessons, right? So he could have did a little bit of a better example for sure, but but the theme and the takeaway about uh, our bias to continue to invest time, money, and energy into something we know is a losing proposition, and we're only continuing it is because we've already invested, we're gonna keep
Sunken
it
costs
some
again,
cost, so we're gonna a cost that can't be recouped. So that I get. Like sometimes we're just gonna continue to keep doing it because we've felt like we've invested too much and we have to see it through, right? And it says, essentialist has the courage and confidence to admit, their mistakes and uncommit no matter the sunk cost. Now, for me, I'm like, yes, right? And I totally agree with it. It's hard. It is hard to know when that point is, though, however, right? It is hard to know what is that point of uncommit. People, when they talk about not finishing a book or not reading or finishing a movie, right? And I think a lot of times, especially for readers, or I know for me, it's like I started the book, I have to finish it, right? Even if I don't like it, if I'm like, oh, this ain't really what I thought it was gonna be, right? A lot of times, like, I need to finish it, but why, right? Or a movie, even if it's critically acclaimed movie, everybody likes it, but I'm not really feeling it. But we usually tend to still pursue it and say, I gotta finish it just because, right? And instead of just saying, I'll stop. I've watched 30 minutes. I'd rather waste 30 minutes here of watching a movie I have no interest in rather than finishing it. And now I've wasted 2 hours of my time that I'm not gonna get back. And I didn't like it any better, right? Or with a book. So I got the gist of it, right? And I think it also, obviously this comes from investing as well. So if you're already into investing and stocks and stuff like that, again, he's mixing everything up and giving it to life lessons, right?
And I think that's probably why it was a disconnect for me, though I agree with the advice. I was like, yo, I would love to see, like, you just gave a couple of examples of reasons to get out.
Right.
So I was looking for that perfect scenario where he gave a example of why he got out of something. But yes, the advice is definitely essential.
yeah, he definitely probably could have did a little bit better than that. But I picked that up. I was like, yes, I literally I'm in a situation right now with that. I'm like, I made the decision yesterday. I have to uncommit to something because I'm like,
it's too much.
It's not even that it's too much. It's just a losing proposition. It's like there's no benefit for me to keep on this path. And I'll tell you about it behind the scenes, but it's like there's no reason to continue down this path. It's I just gotta uncommit, which I plan on doing on Monday. So yeah,
nice.
Yeah. What else? There's so many topics that
I don't want to because we can keep going. We'll just keep going. But I think we covered the overarching theme of the book and some of the specific examples of essentialism and being an essentialist. And I know that I am at least moving forward with the thought of being an essentialist in everything I do, career and business wise, at least. So.
Okay, so I know we said we didn't want to go into more, but there's like 2 more topics. Too much.
All right. Yeah.
All right. One is progress, the power of small wins, right? And that again is, something that, people who work in tech or design and actually no, business marketing it's a familiar concept already. Like we always say, I need a quick win. I need a small win. And I think we talk about it in the business and workplace a lot, but we don't really apply it to our own lives, right? Like we don't really think about the small wins a lot. We don't think about, oh well, I lost 10 pounds. It took me a while, or I started healthy eating. We're like, I'm starting on day 1 and I want to get to day 30 and just have it there and not really celebrating the journey and the
instant gratification,
right? Yep. And the progress that you've been making along the way. And I think that's very important. We have to take that time to acknowledge the progress, even if we aren't where we want to be. right? And I thought, the way he talked about that and just focused on that was good, right? Because it kind of puts things in perspective. Like, oh well, I am making progress. I may not be here, I may not be, or whatever your goals and aspirations are, you might not be there yet, but you have made progress to get closer to it. And I do think it's something we should be mindful of and acknowledge as we are on that journey. And then routine. Designing a routine for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that, listen, I'm all for that right there. Right. I think, Sean, we see like talking about the goats, right?
Mm-hmm.
We see like athletes, we see entertainers, and we see all of that, but we only usually see them in the moments where they're actually performing and they make it look so natural, right? Like, oh wow, they, great basketball skill or high IQ and performance make it look so effort. Only recently, and even then, we still don't really see much of the discipline and the routine that goes into it behind the scenes prior to that, right? Every now and then, we're starting to see documentaries and DVDs, behind the scene footage, and then
But even those don't show everything.
Right.
It's just showing highlights.
The highlights of it, right? You don't see like, they'll be in the studio practicing 8 hours a day just for a 15-minute performance or a 20-minute, right? So, and I think for a lot of us, we don't see that and we don't really take that in consideration. We just want to knock it out the park right away, and we have no routine. We haven't laid any foundation. We haven't laid any pillars of discipline in order to achieve it, right? And I think that's a really, really important factor that we need to be mindful of. And not just in becoming an essentialist, I think in becoming successful as well in any endeavor that we're trying to embark on.
Yeah, definitely. And then the way he broke it down, I mean, like I said, it's essentially prioritizing.
Right.
What is going to get you the fastest, or not even fastest, but what is the closest to what your goal is.
Right.
And staying focused on that.
Right. So I'll ask you this, and then we can cap off. What is your routine? You don't have to give the all the exclusive details, but do you have a routine that you usually try to follow and to help you achieve what you want to do and stuff like that?
I never thought about it, and I don't know that I do. If I do, it's probably not intentional. It's probably just habitual. So yeah, I can't. I don't know that I do. To be honest with you,
you're gonna have to circle back on that.
We're gonna have to. You
can't be reading this
reread
book.
That chapter, maybe.
Don't have a routine. You can't be reading this book and not even be mindful of your routine. Okay, fair.
I'm not. Yeah, I don't know what it. I'm sure I have one that I'm not conscious of, and now, I need to chart that now and see what it is.
Fair enough. But yeah,
Schoolers, what would yours be though? Just so I got somewhere to start from, so I know what I'm doing.
Man, my routine is. I'm not embarrassed, but I feel like if I tell it, it's gonna be like this guy's a little bugged out. But my routine, I get up pretty early. I get up pretty early, so I'm usually up around 5:30 most days, right? Most days, even on the weekend, like my body doesn't let me sleep that late anymore. So majority of my morning from like 5 up until 9 it's a variation of things. It's like me, I meditate, I burn some candles or some incense, I journal, I listen to like I don't know what like mantras and quotes and speeches in the morning, like just from a mental exercise, because we're so focused on physical exercise. You definitely got to be mindful of your mental, right? So all these things that kind of help me get in a certain mindset for the day. Then I'll spend some time reading various books, so some like the Essentialism, right? Whatever's in my reading list that day, in the queue. So all of that, it's a mix of that from the time I get up till around 9 o'clock. Also, after that, while I'm doing all of that, I do exercise, physical exercise as well. So from 5:30 to around 9 is really a mix of all of that, mental, meditation, burning candles, getting a nice mindset, exercising. So hopefully, I say hopefully because it's no guarantee, but by the time 9 o'clock comes and I'm dealing with the world and clients and work and projects and everything else that I'm dealing with, that I am prepared and ready. I'm in a good state of mind and being real focused on what I have to deal with for the day.
Okay. That's interesting that your routine carries over into the weekend, because I do find, I don't know how many people this is true for too, that my routine that I'm not aware of, but I do know that it shifts completely during the weekend. Like the time frame shift, everything is completely different the Saturday, Sunday versus Monday through Friday. So it's interesting that you're able to maintain that. That means you are in control of a lot of your choices.
I'm in control, I will say, I think, but at a certain point now, I might not be, because like, there are times when I want to sleep in late on the weekend. It's not like I get up and say, I got to act like it's a weekday. Right? It's just that I think because of the routine that I have set, my body is so used to it now. So like, if I wake up and I'll say I'm gonna go sleep in, my body be like, oh, so you thought you was. So I'll just be laying in the bed until like 8 o'clock, and I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll just get up now and call it and get on with the day and so forth. So yeah.
That's good. You got your body working for you.
Yeah. It's like on autopilot for the most part. So it's cool. All right, well, you get back to us, sir, on what your routine is, all right?
I do know that it always revolves around the dog. That's how my day begins and ends. It's walking them first thing in the morning and walking them last thing at night. So I know that much. I just got to fill in the gaps in between. That's all.
So essentially what you're saying
is that the dog
is prioritizing your life.
Yeah. I think so. We're going to rectify that.
Okay.
I'm going to give him some graceful no's.
All right.
Moving forward.
Give some graceful no's. Well, we had a breakthrough in today's episode, so
nice.
Cool. All right. So that's a wrap on this week's episode. We hope you enjoyed our discussion and thoughts around this book, and hopefully it provided you with some value as you navigate through your business journey and personal life. As always, if you have a question you would like us to answer on the show, shoot us a message on any of our social media channels, or shoot us an email, questions@businessgrindshow.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe and share on Spotify and iTunes. See you again soon. In the meantime, keep grinding.
The Business Grind is for entertainment purposes. Opinions expressed are those solely of the host and guests. Please consult with a professional and exercise discretion before engaging in any business endeavors.
I'm out here on the grind. I'm out here on the grind.